I held a lacrosse stick in my hands before I could even walk, and I had Blue Devil blood running through my veins as a little girl. You see, my dad played lacrosse at Duke, and I grew up wanting to emulate anything and everything I could about him. It took a long time for my sister and I to convince my parents to let us play lacrosse. See, my dad would say, why would I let my little girls go run around and play a sport with sticks and hard rubber balls flying through the air with absolutely no protection but a mouth guard? You know, there was some wisdom behind those words, but Lindy and I eventually wore them down when I was in the 6th grade. You see, I was becoming very aware that I had this critical period of time where I needed to learn how to play the intricacies of the game rather than just skills of throwing and catching in the front yard, like we would do on an almost daily basis, my siblings and I, along with our father. See, my first dream I can ever remember was to be recruited and play lacrosse at Duke, following in my father's footsteps, and I knew that if I didn't get going, I wasn't going to get there. So from that time on, I played here at Stone Ridge and on travel teams, going up and down the eastern seaboard, playing tournaments. I joined a high visibility lacrosse team out of Baltimore and put in more hours on I-95 during the summers and falls of my high school years than I really would wish to admit. I executed every step of the plan. Between practices, games, tournaments, strength and conditioning sessions, I practiced, trained, and competed 50 weeks out of the 52-week calendar year. I attended all the tournaments I needed to, went to the camps with coaches I wanted to play for, and visited campuses up and down the coast. And during November of my senior year of high school, I found myself signing a national letter of intent to play lacrosse at the then top 30 ranked Colgate University. I had completely devoted myself to this goal of playing collegiate lacrosse for 8 years, even though I'd been dreaming of it for 18. By the time I made it to upstate New York, I had suffered 3 serious concussions and a couple other minor ones along the way that I'm not sure if my parents are really even aware of to this day. Sorry, guys. But as my doctors at Children's National Medical Center told me, I couldn't seem to escape the onset of post-concussion syndrome, where your symptoms don't resolve themselves within the 1 to 2 weeks that people say they usually will. Instead, mine would continue on for months. When I set foot on Colgate's campus for my freshman year, I was right at that 3-week post-recovery period when I could tell if the symptoms were going to start resolving themselves or if they were going to set in further and kind of just be there for a while. Unfortunately then, I couldn't even read a page in book without getting a headache. I knew something wasn't going to go right. So after months of listening to my parents and doctors, dropping hints, and struggling to get through my college course load, I was finally convinced that it was time to hang up my cleats, put my sticks back in the closet, and officially retire from the sport that had defined me for the first 18 years of my life. As a result of this early retirement, I felt as if I had been left with nothing. I had failed to be the collegiate lacrosse player that I had dreamed of ever since I could remember. I never even had the opportunity to put on a Colgate jersey, log a single minute of playing time, or a single statistic in the scorebook. There was nothing to show for my efforts. In my mind, I had failed to accomplish my mission, and I now found myself floundering about. I had completely lost who I was. I saw no future, I had no dreams. I was completely numb. The world around me was spinning, nothing brought me joy, and I don't know if I can say that I once genuinely smiled during my freshman year of college. Now, I had experienced some of this before, but never to this extent. At this point, concussions were starting to make waves around the country in the media as more and more diagnoses were coming to the forefront. And just this week, they're back in the news as NFL players are proactively retiring at the outset of their careers in an effort to avoid the detrimental effects concussions can have. But despite this media attention, I found that few people actually even know what a concussion is. So in its simplest form, it's a brain bruise, but it's your brain, not simply a muscle. So it's kind of important. Basically, you have this tremendous force or impact that's made upon the brain, and it alters the electrical and chemical balance that are critical to cell function and communication as it tears and stretches your cells and axons and all that good stuff that we don't need to go into. It alters that chemistry and throws it into an imbalance, causing a lot of the symptoms. But back then, back when I was a freshman in college, there was a string of suicides amongst then current and former NFL players, and observers, both the ignorant and the informed, were musing that maybe there was a connection between concussions and these deaths. And while they debated, I was already sure of the connection deep in my gut. And since then, science has supported that notion that I already held to be true. Researchers have found that 50% of traumatic brain injury patients experience depression within the first 12 months of injury. And so based on these statistics, we could say that about 2 to 2.5 million individuals experience it in the wake of a concussion. And an even more terrifying statistic is that teens with repeated concussions are 3 times more likely to be diagnosed with depression at some point in their lives, whether it be a year, 5, 10, 20 years down the road. This is something that we just cannot ignore. Interestingly enough to me, and an area that I've done a lot of research in myself, is the effect exercise can have on the treatment of depression. A study out of Duke back in 2000 actually studied about 156 men and women. They were put into 3 treatment groups, either with antidepressant treatment, exercise regimen, or a combination of both. In just 16 weeks, participants across each group, more than 50% of them could no longer be diagnosed with clinical depression. Even more astounding, overall, 70% of them could no longer be classified clinically. And 13% of the participants, not included in that 70, their symptoms were minimized, but they were still technically clinically depressed. So this research tells us that there is some connection between exercise and the treatment of depression, and that it can be just as effective as medication. So they're basically telling us that exercise actually increases your brain's ability to take up serotonin from your blood, increase your dopamine production, and directly affect 2 of the primary neurotransmitters that are responsible for, or at least connected to depression. And even more fascinating, to me at least, is the way that my first concussion was treated and my depression has been treated. When I suffered that first worst concussion back in my junior year of high school, I actually was treated up at the University of Pittsburgh's Sports Medicine Center under the direction of some of the leading doctors in the country when it comes to concussions. They actually put me on a drug that is meant to treat Parkinson's disease. That drug's intent is to increase dopamine production in the brain. So, interestingly enough, that's exactly what an entire class of antidepressant medications is for. The interconnectedness of these things and the brain's complexity just never cease to amaze me, and I take every opportunity I can to learn more. But back to my story. So there I was, an 18-year-old. I was swinging between feeling everything and absolutely nothing. And most days I had this heavy feeling in my chest when I didn't even really want to speak or move. All I could do was close my eyes and sleep because the process of being broken was so incredibly exhausting. I tried my best to make my days fulfilling, but no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't seem to connect to anyone or anything. I felt as if I was drowning, but everyone around me was breathing, and I knew that this was no way to continue to live. I thought often about how I wanted to feel. I wanted to feel alive again, to feel that rush of endorphins that I used to get from playing. I was struggling with these feelings of failure and loss one day when I exited a Lululemon store with one of those reusable red totes with all those motivational quotes and sayings. One saying in particular stood out to me: do one thing a day that scares you. The next morning, I woke up still thinking about this phrase. I looked at this bag and changed. Like many other type A's out there, I have a strong achievement orientation, and I knew that I needed some kind of goal that would both physically and mentally challenge me, kind of get those endorphins back and inspire some renewed drive and focus. And just like that, I found myself registered for a marathon. Choosing a goal that scared me to death, but also reignited the fire within me and gave me some direction. This isn't unique. One of the top psychologists in the area of motivation and goal setting, Edwin Locke, through his research has demonstrated that the more specific and challenging a goal, the higher the performance will be. And trust me, running a marathon was plenty specific of a goal. I mean, you go run 26.2 miles, and it was also terrifying. It fell into this sweet zone. And just for the record, I had never run more than 3 miles at a time before I signed up. So I really still, to this day, don't really know what I was thinking, but I did it. So I trained hard. I logged mile after mile around Hamilton, New York, and later around DC after I transferred to Georgetown to be closer to my parents and my doctors. At mile 23 of the 2010 Marine Corps Marathon, I can still remember it so vividly. I was rounding the corner out of Pentagon City, or Crystal City, onto Boundary Channel Drive by the Pentagon, and I saw my parents. I needed to see them so badly at that point, not for inspiration, motivation, or another goo gel to increase my blood glucose level. I needed to tell my mother to go ahead and call the orthopedist and make an appointment for the next day. You see, I was so determined to succeed that I knowingly ran 26.2 miles and probably 75 to 100 miles before that on training runs on a broken foot. I'm a little stubborn and a little determined if you haven't figured that out yet. But when I crossed that finish line, the pain in my foot could not bring down the runner's high that was taking me all the way to the clouds. And once again, I found myself enjoying those free drugs that I used to get playing lacrosse. And the neuroscience behind these free drugs and our brain's pleasure center is so interesting. So with each accomplishment we make, we send a sensory stimulus to the cortex. The activation of the reward circuit prompts the release of key chemicals, dopamine, serotonin, all that good stuff, which are responsible for feelings of reward, pleasure, euphoria, well-being, happiness, excitement, all of those. And you create these reward memories that act as reinforcement and increase the probability of those behaviors, of you taking those behaviors again. So our brains are really chemically wired to cultivate even the smallest of wins and propel us physiologically to bigger successes. And so after I finally got my foot out of the walking boot, a few weeks later I went on a run. I had no destination, no set mileage, no time goal, really no plan. I just ran. I did it again the next day and the day after that. As I started to get my running legs back underneath me, I was keenly aware of my body's performance. In those quiet minutes of my early morning runs, it was just me, my heavy breathing, the sound of my blood pumping in my ears, the sound of my foot striking the pavement below. And I started to appreciate my runs for what they were. I realized that every time I put those running shoes on, I was better in some way, shape, or form than I was the day before. I was rehabbing that darn broken foot that my stubbornness caused, and slowly progressing. But I celebrated each additional half mile I was allowed to run, or each 30-minute run that I finished without feeling pain in my foot. To me, that was a success, and I started celebrating those, which research has shown to be incredibly powerful. In a study of about 250 employees at 7 different companies, researchers at Harvard Business School found that efforts to track small achievements every day significantly enhanced employees' motivations. They found that making progress on meaningful work has a profound impact on people's moods. They found that 28% of minor incidents has a major impact on people's feelings about their day. On their best days, as measured by overall mood, specific emotions, and motivation levels, steps forward or progress were made on 76% of those days. And similarly, on people's worst mood days, 67% of them included a step backwards, some kind of reverse progress. So through the tracking of these small accomplishments or small wins, we can actively engage with our achievement reward circuits and kind of help be aware of what we're physiologically doing to our reward center. I wanted to keep running marathons, and spoiler alert, I ran the DC Rock and Roll Marathon last weekend in the cold pouring rain. See, I was addicted to the feelings associated with the end of a long run. It sounds strange, but I love the feeling of being empty, worn out, sweat purged. I love the good ache of muscles that have done me proud and carried me across the land. And shortly thereafter, my family and I watched via an online stream a family friend of ours cross the finish line of her first Ironman. I was inspired and suggested that maybe I give triathlon a shot. My parents were overly supportive, encouraging me to go ahead and try it, as they were happy that I'd be putting some less stress on my joints and maybe not going to as many orthopedist or doctor's appointments. myself registered for a sprint triathlon. It was only about 20 miles total, about a half-mile swim, 16-mile bike, and a 5K run. But with any sufficiently challenging goal, I was absolutely terrified. I had not swum a lap in a pool since I was on our country club swim team when I was 8 or 9 years old. Yeah, that's me with the little face painted thing. My bike was a kid's bike from maybe when I was 10. It was coming up on its 6th anniversary of gathering dust in the garage. But I knew I could run. I knew I could do at least part of that race. And everyone who knows me will tell you how much I love the garb of sports. I love the clothing and gear. It is like my thing. I don't have room in my closet for any more athletic clothes, but I apparently just keep buying them because I love them. But anyway, naturally, the day after I signed up for this try, I went to our local bike shop, got myself a shiny new road bike, stopped at the closest sporting goods store, got a swim suit and cap, goggles, and spent the next 10 months steadily preparing. I had to learn how to ride a bike for sport rather than leisure and ride one that fit me. I had to reteach myself how to swim. You see, at the time, I couldn't swim 25 yards without stopping. So I would go to the pool at Georgetown late at night when there was no one there to watch or judge me. And it took me about a month of going at least 3 times a week before I could swim up and down without stopping for a total of 50 yards. I finished my first triathlon in August of 2012, nearly 2 years after I finished that marathon and about a year after I decided that I was going to do it. But see, my success didn't happen overnight. I built on it every day, cognizant of the progress and obstacles I was overcoming. And just 2 years after that first sprint triathlon, I'm a 2-time half Ironman finisher and an Ironman all-world athlete. I'm in the top 10% of my age group. I'm 68th in the world and 28th in the US. But I didn't set out to accomplish this feat. In fact, I didn't even know that it was a thing until Ironman sent me a congratulations email in January. I especially didn't think I could have achieved it only doing half Irons too. But I got here because I set goals that scared me. I drove progress in spite of obstacles, and I was celebrating my small wins. So here are 2 really interesting charts kind of depicting what my training has looked like over the past 2 years and what it's going to look like this year. And just for reference, 2015, that's planned, but through the end of October, so that's not even going to be a full 12 months. To many, these might just be random numbers and charts up on the screen, but to me, these hours and miles represent my dedication, sweat, pain, sacrifice, perseverance, and determination along my endurance journey. You see, the hours of training add up quickly. This year alone, I'll spend nearly 512 hours training and racing, and again, that's only through the end of October. And for all you girls in the audience, that's 73 of your school days, and nearly a little bit more than 3 weeks of training 24/7 around the clock. And this doesn't even include the amount of time it takes me to unpack and pack my gym bag every day, to get to the gym and to shower, which, you know, I've streamlined that process a lot, but you can't really avoid it. It takes time. So this year I'll travel 4,600 miles. That's the distance between Bethesda, Maryland and Honolulu, Hawaii. I will literally travel that far. And just to kind of help celebrate the small wins along the journey in terms of miles, I translate each mile that I train into that journey. So my 1.5 mile swim yesterday brought me 1.5 miles further along I-40 between Memphis, Tennessee and Little Rock, Arkansas, which is where I am in the journey right now. I'm making progress. And this type of visualization really helps me celebrate those small wins. It was only 1.5 miles yesterday, but I'm further than I was before. I do, however, know that I'm going to be in for a challenge once I hit the West Coast and then just kind of flailing about wondrously in the Pacific Ocean for 2,600 miles. So if anyone has a suggestion for me as to how to visualize that part of the journey, I would really appreciate hearing from you later. But back to triathlon, which has taught me to always keep moving forward. One stroke, one pedal, one step at a time, especially in the most painful of moments, when the body is hurting so bad and I don't think I can go another step. There are days with setbacks. I'm still human, trust me. But regardless of the success or failure of an individual training session, each one continues to build upon itself. There are times I have to go take my foot off the gas a little bit, maybe even hit the brake pedal, but I won't go in reverse. I'm always in drive. I'm far from done with this sport. There are plenty more fears to overcome and limits to be broken. This year I have my eyes set on my first full Ironman. It's going to just be a casual 2.4-mile swim, 112-mile bike, and 26.2-mile run in and around Louisville, Kentucky in October. But this is where I want to challenge you all today. And don't worry, I'm not asking you to sign up for a triathlon, a marathon, even a 5K. That's my journey. I want you to find your own. Choose a goal that scares and excites you at the same time. If it doesn't, it's not big enough. These goals will come with obstacles, both those that you see coming and those you don't. Push through them with all your might. Drive progress, do not shift into reverse. And celebrate your small victories along the way. I'm not waiting until I cross that finish line in Louisville to celebrate, and you shouldn't wait to accomplish your mission before you celebrate your small wins. I'm celebrating mine today. Through the ups and downs of my journey through endurance training and racing, I have found a new perspective in life. The suffering and success, the obstacles and victories have made me a stronger, happier person because I'm living in the here and now. I'm not looking forward to the end game. So I challenge you all to do the same. Don't wait until you've reached your goal to be proud of yourself. Be proud of every single step you make along that journey, because in the end, the doing is often more important than the outcome. Thank you.